Hi, I'm Gagan Gulati. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Behavox. Behavox is an end-to-end data operating company.
Gagan, thank you so much for finding time to be with us today on the Avi podcast. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background? What are your main interests, the passions, and what did you do before joining Behavox?
Absolutely. So I joined Behavox 2 months ago as a Chief Product Officer. A little bit of background here, and then I'll move to what did I do before that, before coming to Behavox. As a Chief Product Officer, I have five subgroups who report to me. One is product management, which is quite typical. That's the role. The second one is product engineering. So the engineering team is divided into two parts at Behavox, the platform engineering team and the product engineering team. The platform engineering team focuses on everything platform, from microservices point of view to data storage, data processing, providing the platform for machine learning teams, and providing the platform for the product teams to go build products on top of that. And the product engineering team, of course, builds products on top of that. So that's number two. Number three is around UX. So all our product design, product research team that reports to me. Number four is documentation, which is kind of a given. Enterprise products like the likes of Behavox need to have strong documentation in place. And fifth, by no means least, is our technical partnerships and strategic alliances and competitive analysis team. So that's a small team that focuses on all five of those. I joined this company 2 months ago. Um, and I love it so far. The customers love the products that we build at Behavox. This is very clear from the big names, from SoftBank to Jeffries Bank to Citadel Securities to Mitsubishi, to name it, right? But before I arrived at Behavox to work even deeper on the data operating system as such, and build products on top of the data operating system, I spent almost 16 years at Microsoft. My journey at Microsoft was quite simple and funny at the same time. I started in Windows. So I did Windows Vista, I did Windows 7, I did some of Windows 8. And when I was in Windows, I was an engineer and became engineering manager over a period of time. And
Mhm.
here, my focus was mostly on deployment and management. At the end of 6 years, I figured out that I found all ways to deploy Windows on a box, and I gave up, and then I moved on. When I moved on from there, I joined a startup team within Microsoft called the Healthcare Group, which and the product was called Amalga. This primarily focused on a private cloud for health institutions to do better management, essentially with the data that they have. It kind of set the
Mhm.
base for me for everything data. And then from there on, for the last 9 or 10 years, I've been in Azure, which was also a startup back then. And I focused on data security, starting with sensitivity of data, labeling the sensitive data, encrypting sensitive data, DLP, loss prevention, like saving you from losing your data. An example of that would be if I started emailing you sensitive content, John, right, from my behavorbox.com account, that's not a good thing. And I could be doing it as a mistake. So stopping you is super important. Stopping me from is super important from letting this happen. Moving on, I focused on data compliance, governance, and breach prevention and detection, which is kind of the rage of the day today. We see data breaches all the time. So
Uh-huh.
all of this was more from a product point of view, which is I was building products that helped companies do better data protection, data governance, data compliance, breach notification, detection, and other stuff. So those were my last 10 years. I mean, I worked in a bunch of other companies before this. I worked at Oracle. I worked at BEA Systems that built the best WebLogic server back in the days, and Oracle bought them. I worked in as a scientist for a couple of years as well. I'm not going to bore you with all of that, but yeah, the last little bit has all been in Microsoft, pretty long time, and then now Behavox.
Okay, wow, that's quite a journey you went through. And just curious from the standpoint of kind of the culture shift going from Microsoft, which is, one of the largest organizations, very corporate, and joining Behavox, so, relatively unknown in small startup that's growing very fast. What
Yeah.
has been that transition period so
Huh.
far for you? You've been there a couple of months, and is that what you expected? Just tell us a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll tell you two things. That depends on where you are, and I'll answer your question as I go. Depends on where you are at Microsoft. In some way, Microsoft is a just mothership, right? And you could be in a big group working with on a huge product, um, or you could end up being in a small group, and it looks like a well-funded startup.
Hmm.
So in Windows, I was that big group guy, right? Uh, but when I joined this small healthcare group in the company, and when even in Azure, as I built several products, I was more on the starting up new projects, starting up new products, but well-funded startups. And you didn't have as much fear of losing, right? Because if you lost and the product didn't get through, no problem, you'll just move to a different product,
Gotcha.
right? You're not losing your job as such. Um, However, having said that, it's still saying that you are sitting on a Titanic, right? That there are various rooms, and you could be trying to build your startup, but you know that you're sitting on this massive stable engine, and there are processes in place. There are you can't fall down of Titanic. It's just super hard to fall down and fall into the ocean. It's not going to happen. 99.999% of the times. So you feel like you're on a very stable ship. You may be running really fast on a treadmill on Titanic, but it is Titanic. The goodness of that is you are in a very stable environment, right? You're working very, very hard, right? You're on a treadmill in a room on Titanic. So you're working very, very hard, and you're helping the company move forward at a
Uh-huh.
rapid pace. The good thing about that is that while you're working in a stable company, and you may feel that the company is not moving fast enough because it's a
Mhm.
big company, the fact is that Titanic used to, or any big ship, it does run at a massive speed. So the water it displaces on at any given time is just great, right? And you see that in revenue results. You see that otherwise, which is everybody is working hard on the ship, but the ship is a stable ship with processes in place. I will compare that with Behavox and any startup for that matter. Behavox, I will talk about it a little bit more, but Behavox as a motorboat, right? It's a big, decent sized motorboat. The company has actually decent revenue, right? The company actually has a decent set of infrastructure in place and decent set of processes in place, but it's still a motorboat. So the thrill definitely exists, right? When you get out on motorboat on water, you know you are in thrill, but you also know you are generally safe,
Mhm.
right? In the sense that you're getting in the water, there are enough precautions, there is enough steel on the ship, on the little motorboat, that you're not going to fall out of it if you don't go crazy, right? But it's also not like a scooter, water scooter, where there are 50% chances you'll fall down before you know. So Behaveworks has been to me like that motorboat. It displaces water,
Mhm.
not the impact is great, not as much as you would expect from a big Titanic.
Right.
But you know that you are driving on a motorboat, and this motorboat will only get bigger and become a yacht one day, and once it becomes a yacht, it will become a ship, and one day it'll become a Titanic, right? So you are basically building the motorboat, making it go bigger and bigger, but the thrill of being at a company like Behaveworks helps. It's also not a, just to kind of finish the point, it's also not, as I said, it's not a water scooter, right? And that's an important analogy, which is if you are in a company which is 5%, 10% strong, as a startup, you are literally, you don't know where your next paycheck's going to come from. You don't know when you're going to run out of money. So the Behavex is right there as a motorboat. You know it has a clear future, essentially.
That's a great analogy. I love that. And, sounds like at least it didn't feel like you were joining a little rubber
Yeah, rubber dinghy.
self-inflated boat. So I can definitely relate because I come from a very similar background, going from the Fortune 500 and joining a smaller organization like the one that I'm currently with, ProSource IT. But I love the analogy going from, the big Titanic to the motorboat, where you still, there is the safety net, there is, infrastructure in place, but it's small enough for you to, move faster, make your own decisions, to kind of develop your strategy and implement it. So that's exciting. I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, yeah,
um, One of the topics that I'm very passionate about is, building and fostering a culture of innovation. It's, at Harvard we had this great professor who really, focused on the whole theme of building almost a culture of experimentation, which I really really enjoyed. And we had a lot of case studies on companies like Booking.com and Priceline that go through a lot of these great experiments, innovation, hubs internally. Curious to get your take on that. How do you go about building that culture of innovation, at least with the team that you run right now? I know it's a very loaded question and we
yeah.
could probably spend the whole episode talking about it, but just some tidbits in terms of like quick recommendations, quick wins that allow you to do that.
Yeah, a couple. I will make a couple of points, and as I said, it is a big topic. I think to me, it all starts with hiring smart people, right? And so you hire really smart people, and then you ask them to figure out what should be the next strategy for us and how should we innovate, right? So that's number one. There's a famous saying, I think, um, that was made some time ago by Steve Jobs as well, who basically said, hire smart people, put them in a room, and they'll figure out, what you should be doing. You shouldn't be telling them what to do. And I actually follow that very rigorously. And I feel that this is where I must hire people who are smarter than me, and those smart people should hire people who are smarter than them. And if we can build that, if we can build that pipeline, the innovation will automatically come because smart minds will come together and basically tell us what to do by connecting with customers, by understanding what their pain points are, by innovating and out innovating in some sense, right? So I feel like um, that to me is number one, right? Which is hiring good. So from a culture of innovation, I think this is where you always have to find the right balance between what our customers demand of us, right, and what our strategy should be, right? And from a strategy point of view, you have to leave enough room for innovation, experimentation, and so that and if you work on these innovations and incubations, as I call them typically, and experimentations, it's okay if they failed, and we have to move on from there, right? So there should be no fear. For example, there should be no fear of failing. I think
Mhm.
that is the second big thing, which is you can talk about innovation, experimentation, and incubation. We have to build a culture where failure is failing on not failing on delivering on the incubation, but failure for an incubation to become a full-fledged product in the hands of customers is okay,
Mhm.
because either the product market fit didn't exist, or the timing didn't work out very well, or the amount of energy that needs to go behind to make it a full product and innovation idea is just too way beyond what we can afford at any point in time,
Mhm.
right? So to innovate, we need to find smart people. We need to put them on. We need to get them to incubate these ideas that can one day become the big products,
Right.
and clearly ensure that from a commitment and OKR point of view, that success equals completion of the incubation. Success doesn't mean converting the incubation into a full-fledged product, because there are so many meta factors that can come in that can stop that incubation from going into a big product.
Mhm.
So till we can clarify that, life will be easy, because when all of the fact is, every day when our product managers, our engineers, our support teams, our account managers talk to customers, there will always be these ideas back of the hand. Which, what if we built a product like this? What if we made these changes? What if we did X? What if we did Y? And we have to make sure that these what ifs come into fruition, right? In the form of a document, in the form of an incubating idea, in form of code, and there should be freedom to do so.
Mhm.
And it's okay if those didn't materialize in the big picture, and those won't be considered failures. They will be considered successes that you completed them. So that lack of fear and that fearlessness is key in my head to allow the team, the company to go innovate
Mhm.
in the future.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you on the whole aspect of, failure. And it's within the lines of what you were talking about, empowering your teams to make the decisions, to not wait for somebody to sign off on that. And if you build that environment where if failure, so to say, is actually treated as an opportunity to improve and learn versus, oh my God, something went wrong, what do we do now? That, I mean, that's inevitable, things will happen, things will go wrong, but actually having that mentality that you almost greet that and like, oh, okay, here's the problem, how do we fix this,
Yeah,
and learn from that. I think that's within the lines, and I love those examples, so definitely thank you for those recommendations.
absolutely.
When it comes to kind of, you as a chief product officer, obviously, you oversee a lot of different groups, but at the end of the day is developing a product that delivers value, a
Yes.
product that people will use to either make their lives easier, make their operations easier. I'm curious to get your take on what are some of the biggest challenges for when bringing a product to life. What are the kind of the main roadblocks that or the misconceptions that you overcome as kind of the head of the product? So just curious to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, this is a very great point. The typical problem I have always tried to avoid, basically try to, or let me say the philosophy I have always tried to drive is a very simple word, which is customer. Knowing your customer and understanding your customer and having hard data about what your customers want from us is way more important than any other opinion from anybody.
Mhm.
Typically what happens is that most teams stall or build the not the right product, which is not great product market fit, um, and therefore don't see usage, and therefore don't see revenues growing over a period of time, is because they either miss the persona for what they were building the product, miss the problems that the personas are having,
Mhm.
and they miss that, or in general never could align themselves behind behind the problems that the customers are facing. Right, end of the day, you could build the most beautiful product, but if the persona that's going to use your product is not excited about what they are seeing, because it is not useful for them on a day-to-day basis, and it's so true in the enterprise world, right? This is what I've done over the last many years, right? Which is we're building products to help our customers be more productive
Mhm.
in whatever they do, whether it's a compliance officer or a security officer or it's an IT guy, it doesn't matter. But we're hoping that they will use our product and become more productive, and therefore focus on bigger, better things. So knowing what the problems are and building a product that will help our personas, our customers, our users be more productive is job number one. And frankly, this is where a lot of us fail actually as well,
Yeah.
because we have preconceived notions, we have preconceived ideas or opinions about what that productivity would look like for this person, and we do not go and design and plan enough, and we don't discover enough in advance, and we focus on execution rather than specking out what we need, designing what we need, getting the feedback from the customers, this is exactly what the customers need, and then putting that back into the product ideas. So so that loop, that the idea, understanding our customers needs, um, creating creating the right product ideas, going back to the customers and asking them if this will help, taking that feedback, continuing to refine the product ideas, creating proof of concept, again feedback loop, creating, deploying a pilot in a customer's place, again feedback loop. And you continue to do that till the product is matured enough that our customers will go and deploy it in their environment and actually get the value out of it.
Right.
And if you don't build that feedback loop, it's not worth it.
Right, absolutely. And a lot of the points that you're making is they resonate so well with me because there's an article that I probably read at least once a month. It's by Stuart Butterfield. He's I think I said his last name right. He's the founder of Slack,
Yeah,
and that famous Medium post that he posted, that something around "We don't sell saddles here," where that don't sell a saddle, sell the kind of the horseback riding culture, or almost that experience.
yeah,
And if you focus on that instead of the actual product, because I agree, nobody cares about your product, nobody cares about the killer features, probably, even our parents don't even care. But how is that going to make your life easier? What's in it for
yeah,
them?
yes,
What are the benefits? I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And
yeah,
coming from you having all that experience in product before, I think that that makes perfect sense. What just to switch gears a little bit, what are the different trends or ideas that really excite you, or something that you observe, that you research lately, that you would love to either invest in, or you would love to either perhaps implement in your organization? Just curious, what's on Gagan's bookmarks bar as far as the saved kind of the articles and URLs that you observe?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point, um, and it's actually what has driven me to come to this company at Behavox. I mean, I've been in the data space for 10 years now,
Hmm.
and there have been a lot of articles that came out in 2010, 2012, 2014, 2015, which said data is a new oil, right? Oh, and we say all about data. Generating insights from data is just job number one. It's going to change the world. Apply AI, apply better machine learning, apply, right? You can read, there are dozens and dozens and hundreds of articles that talk about the importance of data
Hmm.
to an organization, and how if you're not data driven, then then you will uh, then you'll lose it to your customers, right? Sorry, into the competitors, right? You'll not be competitive anymore. All of that is true. I do not disagree at all. That's why you see great data analytics companies out there. That's why you see great or companies like Tableau, like Power BI coming in from Microsoft, coming in and saying, we will help you visualize this data,
Hmm.
right? That's why you see this the upsurge of the data science discipline as such, right? Which helps you make sense out of all of the data, because data must must convert itself into information. So you can use this information to generate the right insights and you use these insights to build the right actions,
Hmm.
right? And that entire loop has to work. Now, in some discipline, in some industries, this has made its way sooner than later. Like from a customer experience industry, sometimes even in support industry, sometimes even in customer acquisition (CRM) industries, you'll see a massive amount of innovation happening,
Hmm.
right, in this field. I'm not saying there is a lot of perfection in there, but it's actually definitely on the rise, big time. So far, there has been a lot more focus on visualization of data and generating insights after we have visualized data.
Right.
What my experience had been was that in the field of security and compliance, right, which is security and compliance as is growing as a discipline, as an industry like crazy today.
Right.
And the reason behind that is that the world is becoming more digital than ever before,
Hmm.
right? The idea of physical security still exists, but the idea of digital security and digital compliance is going through the roof. And what has happened over a period of time is that privacy has also come in with GDPR and CCP and other set of rules, right? And you put that all together, the compliance word and the security word um, is just becoming way more important to from a customer point of view,
Uh-huh.
right? From an organization point of view, and the thing that hasn't happened, and the reason why I am at Behavox, is that we haven't really, as an industry, done enough to deploy our wherewithal together to solve the tough problems when it comes to compliance. Now, this is about, in my head, this is about, finding a needle in the haystack. For example, when it comes to finding out who are my employees who are not conducting themselves well in an organization,
Mhm.
right? Like today, we're all on Zoom and Slack and Teams on a daily basis. The problem that we all face today is that we are more remote than ever before, and therefore, if you're two employees and they're who are chatting, who are emailing each other, who are slacking each other, who are talking on Teams, and um, there is bullying going on, there is racial discrimination going on, sexual abuse happening, sexism happening, could be any of those,
Right.
right? It is becoming harder and harder for companies to actually find out those cases, not from any other bad reason. I think ethics and corporate governance and compliance basically are becoming paramount, and
Mhm.
it's now more than ever that um, these things are becoming important. I mean, you already know what's happening with Black Lives Matter movement, and all of these are great signs for us as a culture and as a civilization. But the implementation of that in corporate world is lacking today.
Mhm.
Right? We talk about machine learning, and there's absolutely great work happening in machine learning. On the other side, we talk about collecting data, and that's fantastic. Of course, we all want to collect data,
Mhm.
but how do you put that machine learning and NLP system to use against this data? We are actually at a starting point. We are not very far.
Right.
And it's not easy either, because you're talking about terabytes and terabytes of data. and you're trying to basically find out who did what wrong, right? Or so that's one angle, like misconduct, miscompliant,
Right.
right? And the other angle is how do I use this data to actually make my culture better,
Mhm.
right? How do I? So one is finding the bad guys. I think that's the easy way to put it. The other one is how do I make my company's life even better now that everybody's remote and in COVID world,
Right.
right? How do I know that we are not being overworked? How
Mhm.
do I know that work balance is being managed well?
Mhm.
How do I know that um, um, how do I know that as a team we are functioning better today than we were before?
Right.
And so it's about keeping the company's culture intact on what the principles you have to put in place in the physical world. Now you have to put it in place in the digital world.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's where we're going to see because the world has changed to a hybrid mode forever, right? It's just a given, right? Working remote is not going to be seen as a bad thing anymore, like because everybody has done it now once.
Mhm. Right.
Um, right.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where my head is. That's why I am here in this company because I saw that the need for coming up with the right set of solutions that put data
Mhm.
and the word of machine learning, NLP, and artificial intelligence together. When I say data, I mean text, I mean voice, I mean video. Like put up all of that together,
All
and
that.
you have to gel them well and solve interesting problems. And I believe one of the places where the interesting problems will be solved is in the compliance, ethics, corporate governance world, where there is not enough monitoring and there not enough or innovation out there that's
Mhm.
happening today.
Right, absolutely. At the end of the day, as they say, data never lies. And it's like you've mentioned, especially in compliance and the ethics and the whole regulatory space. There's so much data out there, but it's just not, utilized to the with the right intent or with the right purpose. And gathering that data and visualizing in the right way, I think is just different examples of how that could be one of the extremely as they say sexy trends in this space. So definitely could relate on that with you. To shift the topic a little bit as we close out the episode, can you I want to talk a little bit about the passion of mine is hiring, onboarding, and really finding the best talent.
Yes.
Can you give us a glimpse of into an interview with Gagan? What does it look like? Do you keep? Do you get creative? Do you take him on long walks or whatever, long Zoom meetings? And I want to as much as you can just share what does that experience look like, and what do you look for in some of the responses when you talk to people, especially these days through Zoom and video calls.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely harder now than it was before. I can tell you that. I look for three things, especially in product management, areas, and also actually in general, I should say. One is a raw horsepower, IQ, right? Your intelligence quotient. That is important. You're working in a high tech industry like the one we are in, right? And I'm in, and the intellectual horsepower is important. So that as I said, you always hire people who are smarter than you, and intellectual horsepower is a key part of that overall equation. So you need to find people who are just intellectually sound, right? That's to me is super important, because you want to have great conversations. You want to strategize together. You want to build things together, and you can do that in a much better fashion when you have a group of intelligent people sitting together. So that's one. The second most important thing for me is EQ, which a lot of us just miss sometimes, which is the emotional quotient, right? Which is this idea that if you are a smart group of smart, we are a group of smart people, then you must have the right emotional quotient to know how to work together
Mhm.
as a group, right? To understand the dynamics of the team, to understand that some people, some colleagues of yours would be introverts, some would be extroverts. How do you take all of us together further?
Mhm.
So that's the EQ part. So I look for the right EQ from the candidates. Um, and the third thing is their motivation and passion for what they are trying to bring along. And that is equally or probably more important than the first two, but I think it is where if I'm interviewing a candidate for a senior position, I would definitely want to ensure that they have researched about Behavox, for example,
Mhm.
about me. They have questions ready that they want to ask to find out. whether they are good fit with us, whether we are a company as a company a good fit for them,
Right.
right? They would want to know what's our culture. They would want to know what's our leadership style. They will want to know what's our work-life balance. They would want to understand, am I getting it the right? Am I getting into the right thing, right? So that to me is the third one, which is motivation and passion, which will typically show up with from the questions that the person may ask of you. And so yeah, so that's the third thing. I will definitely do that. And my interviews typically go half and half, like, or maybe say 60-40, where I 60% of the time I am asking,
Mhm.
and the remaining 40% of the time I expect the other person to ask me questions, essentially,
Mhm.
and find out about the company, about the organization, about the team, about the culture.
Very cool. Yeah, and I love that you make it interactive, that it's not, just you interviewing the candidate. It's a two-way street, that you provide them with an opportunity to, gain an insight through a very short conversation. So hopefully get some kind of an idea of what they're getting into. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, for our listeners, there you go. If you're going to be interviewing with Gagan, you'll have at least some type of an insight, what to expect. But in all seriousness, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing some of these, recommendations in terms of what to look for and what's important to you as an executive. Gagan, last but not least, what are you currently reading, or what is one book that you always recommend to others, and why is that?
Oh, that's a tough one. Um, the one book that I read almost once in a year, or almost every couple of years, as I change jobs, or or change, or I got promoted multiple times at my previous company at Microsoft, or I moved teams between the company. I mean, I was there for 16 years, so you can
Mhm.
imagine I didn't change my jobs too much. But the book that I read as I was joining Behavox was my one of my favorite authors, Marshall Goldsmith, and his book of "What Got You Here Won't Take You There." Won't
Mhm.
get you there. Sorry. It's a very interesting book. I don't know if you've read it, Jan, but it's a book which basically kind of takes examples of what would it take to succeed, and the idea there being that don't be rigid, don't have a rigid mindset. You may have a formula that made you succeed in your current job,
Mhm.
and you got promoted because of that, or your company did really well. But then when you reach the different level, next level, different role, right, it may not, the same formula may not work for you. And the book kind of walks through the practical examples of mistakes that you can make. So I recommend this book to everyone who has worked for me, who has got who promoted over the years with more responsibilities, with better roles, like you were an individual contributor, you became a leader, manager, or if you change companies, you joined my company, right, wherever I was, my group. I would typically suggest folks to read that book. So that's one of the books that I finished up as I was joining Behavox.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I won't bore you with all the books that I've read after coming to Behavox. I've read two, but they're also very financial oriented. Yeah. I mean, right now I'm just learning because Behavox is very is big on data and AI ML, but it's primarily the customer base is financial customers.
Uh-huh.
So we are very focused on that. So coming here, I'm learning through books as the best way to learn around the various terms that are used around insider trading or otherwise.
Oh
So
yeah.
those have been really good eye-opening books.
Mhm. Well, that's exciting, and thank you for sharing. And for our listeners, we'll make the titles of these books available in the episode notes. Gagan, I know you're very busy. You got to go save the world from all of the compliance and fraud. Really appreciate you taking the time and talk to us today. It was a very short conversation, but packed with a lot of really cool insights. I personally learned quite a bit. Definitely look forward to staying in touch with you, and thanks so much for your time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jan. This was a very interesting conversation. Thank you.